Hello, I'll be doing a read aloud from here, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, I'm only reading, 2 pages, so this is pretty short. I've always wanted to do a read aloud, or basically audiobook, so here it is. Read to you by Leonardo Cavero. Chapter 13, Mad-Eye Moody. The storm had blown itself out by the following morning, though the ceiling in the great hall was still gloomy. Heavy clouds of pewter gray swirled overhead as Harry, Ron, and Hermione examined their new course schedules at breakfast. A few seats along, Fred, George, and Lee Jordan were discussing magical methods of aging themselves and bluffing their way into the Triwizard Tournament. "Today's not bad. Outside all morning," said Ron, who was running his finger down his schedule. "Herbology with Hufflepuffs and Magical creatures. Damn it, we're still with the Slytherins. Double divination this afternoon," Harry groaned, looking down. Divination was his least favorite subject, apart from potions. Professor Trelawney kept predicting Harry's death, which he found extremely annoying. You should have given it up like me, shouldn't you?" said Hermione briskly, buttering herself some toast. "Then you'd be doing something sensible, like arithmancy." "You're eating again, I noticed," said Ron, watching Hermione adding liberal amounts of jam to her toast, too. "I've decided there are better ways of making a stand about elf rights," said Hermione haughtily. "Yeah, and you were hungry," said Ron, grinning. There was a sudden rustling noise above them, and 100 owls came soaring through the open windows, carrying the morning mail. Instinctively, Harry looked up, but there was no sign of white among the mass of brown and gray. The owls circled the tables, and looking for the people to whom their letters and packages were addressed. A large tawny owl soared down to Neville Longbottom and deposited a parcel into his lap. Neville almost always forgot to pack something. On the other side of the hall, Draco Malfoy's eagle owl had landed on his shoulder, carrying what looked like his usual supply of sweets and cakes from home. Trying to ignore the sinking feeling of disappointment in his stomach, Harry returned to his porridge. Was it possible that something had happened to Hedwig, and that Sirius hasn't even got his letter? His preoccupation lasted all the way across the sodden vegetable path until they arrived in the greenhouse in Greenhouse 3 for their herbology class. But here he was distracted by Professor Sprout, showing the class the ugliest plant Harry had ever seen. Indeed, they looked less like plants than thick black giant slugs, protruding vertically out of the soil. Each was squirming slightly and had a number of large, shiny swellings upon it, which appeared to be full of liquid. "Bobbitugers," Professor Sprout told them briskly. "They need squeezing. You will collect pus." "The what?" said Seamus Finnegan, sounding revolted. "Pus, Finnegan, pus," said Professor Sprout, "and it's extremely valuable, so don't waste it. You will collect the pus, I say, in these bottles. Wear your dragonhide gloves. They can do funny things to the skin when undiluted. Bobbituber pus." Squeezing the Bobbitubers was disgusting, but oddly satisfying. As each swelling was popped, a large amount of thick yellowish-green liquid burst forth, which smelled strongly of petrol. They caught it in the bottles as Professor Sprout had indicated, and by the end of the lesson had collected several pints. "This will keep Madame Pomfrey happy," said Professor Sprout, stopping the last bottle with the cork. "An excellent remedy for the more stubborn forms of acne, Bobbituber pus. Should stop students resorting to desperate measures to rid themselves of pimples." "Like poor Eloise Midden," said Harry Abbott, a Hufflepuff, in a hushed voice. "She tried to curse hers off." "Silly girl," said Professor Sprout, shaking her head, but Madame Pomfrey fixed her nose back on the end. A booming bell echoed from the castle across the wet grounds, signaling the end of the lesson, and the class separated. The Hufflepuffs climbing into the stone steps for Transfiguration, and the Gryffindors heading into the other direction, down the sloping lawn towards Hagrid's small wooden cabin, which stood on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid was standing outside his hut, one hand on the collar of his enormous black boarhound, Fang. There were several open wooden crates on the ground at his feet, and Fang was whimpering and straining at his collar, apparently keen to investigate the contents more closely. As they drew nearer, an odd rattling sound reached their ears, punctuated by what looked like minor explosions. And that is all for the read aloud. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining us. Bye.